are, I guess, mesenchymal stem cell that can be derived from the brain, from the bone marrow. So from bones, and these, they can generate bones or cartilage or connective tissues. So I guess, and this can be also taken from your own.
Welcome to this episode of Growth Island. My name is Friis and I'm your host as always. And today we're going to dig into a subject that I've really wanted to learn about for several years. It's one of the big things when it comes to health and big breakthroughs in regards to us living some healthy lives, potentially also living longer. We're going to learn more about today, whether it's actually pushing in that front as well. So for that, I looked into who are some of the best in the world in this subject. And I found one of the top people. He is a professor at the Heinrich Heine University in Dusseldorf, Germany. He's the editor-in-chief of the journal Stem Cell Research. So the subject, as you might have guessed now, is stem cells. Something that if you've been in the biohacking circle or longevity circles, you've definitely heard about it. Even it's getting more mainstream. One of my friends had his knee with like this new procedure done in Copenhagen with stem cells. So this is something that's popping up many places, but today we're going to learn more about it. And for that, I got Alessandro Prigion, if I said it right.
Yes.
Alessandro, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. I'm very happy to discuss this topic that I'm also very passionate about. Thank you.
So you're doing some of the really cool research in this area. How did you get into that?
Yeah, so basically, I'm interested in somehow doing some good, like everybody, I guess. So I started wanted to be a medical doctor, but I realized that there were two issues that were not good for my personality. Was that a lot of responsibilities, so because something goes wrong, of course, but also that you need to study a lot of things, but very, let's say, superficial. Instead, I was much better. It's very smaller subject, more in depth. So I realized that it was not good for me and how I'm built. So I started looking into research. So then I started a PhD. And so that I found that I could deal better with responsibilities, because if my cells die, my cell culture, dies. It's not like my patient would die, but in the long term, I can still be helpful. And also for my way of approaching, knowledge, I find that I could sit and think in a much more relaxed way rather than being in a hospital where you need to think on your feet immediately and do something. So that was not good for my personality. So that's how I started my experience, my journey. And then I basically started, let's say, from a medical part, from interesting about disease. But then I heard about stem cell, like you also maybe have heard that I said, and that was the time, maybe we will go through this topic, when there was a big through into making stem cell from normal cells of your body. And so then I started going into this topic. That was in 2018. And since then, I'm in this topic continuously. Yeah.
That's fantastic. So for someone sitting out there, like stem cells, I never heard about that before. What is stem cells?
Yeah, that seems like easy question, very impressive. But basically, somehow this knowledge is still not in the general public, and which is surprising because stem cell is very easy to define. It's just a cell that lives longer. That means can be eternal if you want. They can live longer, and then can differentiate, can become something else. So just two properties: living longer and then differentiating, becoming something else. But these two properties are slightly different depending on the type of stem cell. And this is why I think that their complication arise. And that's why there's also some misunderstanding in the public. And that's why there's this, on one hand, this idea of hope the stem cell could be the cure of everything. And also, on the other hand, people that can take advantage of that and can say, okay, I can sell you this stem cell and you will be cured. And so we need to really understand which kind of stem cell. So that's when somebody talk about stem cell, the first question is which stem cell? And so basically, just to make it easier, there's two types of stem cell. There's a stem cell that can do everything. These are the stem cells that generate us, so that like embryonic stem cell. And then there are stem cells that are in our body that can do a specific thing or a specific type of cells. For example, we have muscle stem cell, we have brain stem cell, we have intestinal stem cell, and these, they can do a very specific thing. They can generate, for example, in the brain, they can generate neurons or cells of the brain, in the muscle, but they cannot do other things. So I think that's very important to remember. And these are so-called adult stem cells. So they can be also in your adult body. And these, sorry, just to finish, and these are the ones that upon aging, these are the ones that we start be depleting. So that the ones that are so-called also responsible for aging, that means is this pool of stem cell upon that we have, this adult stem cell, over time they will be lower.
So my friend that got a knee operation with stem cells, he would have gotten some muscle stem cells, I'm guessing.
Yeah, probably these are, I guess, mesenchymal stem cell that can be derived from the brain, from the bone marrow, so from bones, and these they can generate bones or cartilage or connective tissues. So I guess, and this can be also taken from your own bone marrow. So this is so-called autologous. That means you don't need somebody else, and this is good because you don't generate an immune reaction. If you would take this from somebody else, there's always some antibodies or some reaction that come from our immune system they might reject. So if you can get it from your own bone marrow, you can then avoid that. But these are specialized stem cells, and these are stem cells that reside in your body, and these are not, let's say, able per se to make other things like neurons or other things.
Got it. So basically, stem cells, they seem to be able to live longer or potentially, theoretically, eternal. That's important. There's 2 different types of stem cells, and that stem cells can have different functions. That's kind of like part of the foundation that we need to understand.
Yes, exactly. So like I say, in principle, it's very easy, but on the other hand, when you like for everything, the more you start, digging, then it becomes more complicated. But yes, that's basically the point, that we need to know which kind of stem cell we're talking about. And then once we know which kind, then what they can really do. And that's basically the main important information. Yes.
Okay. And you can both have stem cells from yourself, but you can also get stem cells from other people.
Yes. But when you get it from other people, like I said, you get this complication of potentially getting immune rejection, because your body will protect you against whatever comes from that is foreigner. And this basically is the dogma. And this is how we're born, and from what we were generating, what we have in the body. But then, of course, there were something that we as scientists, people, have been able to do, which is to change this. And this is why I also become fascinated with that, because, like I said, one type of stem cell is made to do a certain thing, but we can change that. And so that's what is becoming very interesting also in the field of aging. And basically, this is called reprogram. And this was what the Nobel Prize of Shinya Yamanaka in 2016. So basically, to make it easier, you can make any kind of cells of your body to big stem cell, but the one that can do everything, the one that is like an embryo. So you can reprogram. And so this changes everything, because that means that suddenly you don't need to have only your bone marrow to make your knee operation, but you can get your skin cells, get reprogrammed, and then with this stem cell that are artificially made by us, we can do both. We can do both the knee, but also the brain. And that becomes all the excitement, because with this possibility to artificially change what the cells can do and artificially make stem cell, this increased our number of possibilities of what we can do.
Yeah. So normal stem cells, they come from the bone marrow.
For example, the one that are, these are bone marrow stem cell, but there are muscle stem cell, there are neural stem cell. These are in different organs. You have different sort of stem cell population. They're so-called in a niche, means in an environment. And this is different environment in different organs of our body. Okay. Yes.
And then we can kind of manipulate them. That's where the level of science comes in.
Yes.
And then we were able to take muscle stem cells and change that in so it can do something for brain stem cells or bones and so on.
Yes. So we can change, we can reprogram, that's the word. We can reprogram a cell that it's not necessarily a stem cell. It can be something from your skin, and we can make it become a stem cell. And that means that from your skin, you can then do everything. And that was the excitement, like I said, in 2016, when the Shinya Yamanaka got the Nobel Prize, because the field or medical field thought, okay, that means that we could do everything and it would be very easy. And we see now things are not always that easy when you go into the technical part, because it's true, we can do it in vitro, means in the lab, we can do that in the lab. But to transfer that in real life application, that's much more complicated, because of technical reason and something to do.
Often things are easier in vitro, like
Yes.
doing in a lab, and then we
Yes.
have to get it to rats, and we have to get it to humans, and
Yes.
so.
Yes.
So what are some of the amazing things that we can do with stem cells right now in regards to treatments that we by now know that kind of works well, and then we can move into some of the more like futuristic things that we hope that it'll be able to do?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, this kind of, when you mention, the knee operation or very specific kind of operation in your body, it works. So there are procedures that are based on mesenchymal stem cell. These are like from your tissue, and this we know it works, but it's limited. So we cannot, let's say, repair the nervous system or repair your heart effectively. And so the real thing comes when we use this reprogrammed stem cell, because they could do that. And so there is now some clinical trial for retinal, so for the eye, and also for the brain, using this reprogrammed stem cell that you can make from your own skin. You reprogram them, and then you can use them to repair the eye problem, or also in the brain. There's a clinical trial also on Parkinson's disease, where you can then, because from stem cell you can make neurons, and you can use these neurons to replace the lost neurons that are caused by the degeneration of Parkinson's disease. So these are the things that are already happening. But what maybe you might have heard is really in the field of aging, because there's several companies that are being also biotech company into this reprogramming or rejuvenation field, where, because it has been shown in mice that you can also make the whole mice look a bit younger when you use this sort of reprogramming approach. It's not so easy, because the downside is really cancer, because if you want to make the cells because like I said, the two features of stem cell, right? Proliferation and then differentiation. So if you make the cells proliferate too much, that's what you can get, which is cancer. So it's not so easy. But because of this study in vivo in animals, there's now this idea that you can have this rejuvenation also in humans, and you can reprogram your own body. Yeah. But this is really what is far away still.
That we still need to wait some years and some more research and a lot of fails to. That's interesting, like that if we can crack it, we can rejuvenate. If we try it out and test it, we might getting cancer instead, right? So it's very important to know, if you're in the early stages of testing something out, what are the risks? Because there's always risk, even when it's been more tested. So, but it's amazing that we can regenerate the eye.
Yeah, the eye is quite peculiar, because it's very protected from the rest. So it's a very confined space, and it's also in terms of immune response, that the cell that come to respond. So it's very protected. So it's an area that can be easily, let's say, targeted without being worried that things happen somewhere else. So that's why it's also been used as a proof of concept now.
Yeah, got it. So there is this guy that's quite famous in the health circles, so biohacking circles, called Dave Asprey. I'm not sure if you ever heard about him.
No, what is he working on?
So he has a really big podcast on health and different things, but he's like the father of the term biohacking, which can be understood in many different ways. And he's very much at the experimental side. So he tried things way before that the public would do it, right? Or if you would be in a trial. And one of the things that he's been using stem cells for is his penis. For getting, I'm not sure whether you call it more energy into that or getting more. Is that anything that you heard about, like for the general health, and put it down there? Or is that more like the Hollywood people that has too much money and heard this is interesting?
To be honest, I've not heard of that. I'm also trying to think.
Why?
Because there are kind of stem cell. There are the spermatogonian stem cell, the one that then generate the sperm. These are very interesting because they can only make sperm. We said the stem cell can do a lot of things, but these are unipotent. They can only do one thing. So they're very interesting stem cell. So and there's been some very interesting thing that, especially with these reprogrammed cells, if you think about it, if you're a couple, let's say homosexual couple, and you don't have, so you want to make, let's say, eggs or sperm from your skin, you could do it, potentially. So that's what we're trying to see, if you can make.
Hey, hold on, I got to
Yeah.
So you would take, let's say you're a woman, and you'd be
Yeah.
able to take the skin from a woman and make
Mhm.
that into sperm cell or sperm
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
could then actually make the woman pregnant.
Yeah. These are, I mean, there are of course barriers, ethical barrier of what you could do, but that's what been studied in mice. So the ability to, these spermatogonia stem cells, they're quite tricky. So I'm now working on these, but
So we still
they're
have some years as men before
yes.
we are totally redundant. Now they don't even need a donor. Then okay.
Yeah, but these are the thing that you can manipulate and make cells doing something. But in the, let's say, in the penis itself, the only thing that I was thinking is this, or maybe muscles that you can make. But muscle stem cells are quite tricky to differentiate. So I'm not sure. I don't know about that. But that's
A lot of weird stuff is happening in Hollywood. People are testing new things and trying to be young, right? So would it be likely that in the future we would get stem cells to also build up our muscles faster? Or what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, because to be honest, this is something that I know there's a lot of hype in this, but I think that actually, to be honest, the best thing would be to make your own local stem cell healthier rather than injecting something. And then there's also some tendency to think that technology is better and we just have, and then we can use it. But with technology, one other thing, it's also that sometimes you get other side effects that you don't want. So if you could, in a way that you help your own stem cell to make better muscles, I would favor that. I'm not sure how much you would transplant something and then they need to, I don't know. But yes, but theoretically it's possible that you can improve some local body, part of your body, with some specific stem cell. The difficult thing that I just mentioned before is the total body, let's say, rejuvenation. That's the holy grail that these biotech are now working on. But it's much more complex also because of this cancer side effect.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So as I understand is where we are the furthest with stem cells is on local places like at the body. So like you're saying in the eye, it might be in the knee. Potentially, I think I read something that people thought that one day you would put stem cells in you to keep your hair longer. I heard about it with something called lichen sclerose, which is an intimate disease that's at the vagina or the penis, where they're also experimenting with getting that better because it ruins the skin. So that's where stem cells is most applicable right now, like specific things where we want to heal something. Is that correct?
Yeah. Yes. So basically, this all you mentioned, it all makes sense. This is all about under the umbrella. It's called regenerative medicine, to regenerate. But yes, this is one main application of stem cell. But there are other applications that are not necessarily to regenerate something. So because you can use stem cell also for the ability to make, like I said, other cell type, and you can use this cell type. For example, one big use right now is really for drug discovery. And even Shinya Yamanaka, that got the Nobel Prize for this reprogrammed stem cell, he said he didn't envision that. He thought, I make this reprogrammed stem cell, and the most useful thing would be to use them to go back to yourself, because you don't have a problem for to block your immune system. So you could make your cells, make neurons, and replace for regenerative medicine. But this is challenging, like I said before. Like you said, it's good, it's working for some specific, but there's. So another area is really to use the stem cell outside of your body, and then use them for their ability to make a lot of cells, and because they proliferate, the ability to make specific cells like neurons. And that's also what I'm working on. So we use this stem cell to differentiate into specific cells or tissue. And there you can do something with these cells. You can study a disease, or you can find drugs. A lot of pharma companies are now commonly using or implementing a lot of stem cell related pipelines, because they can make a lot of things. So, and you can make them in a personalized manner. So let's say I have a certain disease and I give you my skin, and then you can reprogram into iPS cells, make neurons, and test what these neurons, what can we make it better, or test specific drugs, what are the most likely side effects. So then if you see, you're more sensitive to this drug, then when you decide which kind of drug you want to give me, you already know because you already tested in my specific cells. So this is a whole area that I'm more working on, less on regenerative medicine, but really in using stem cells to build a model of a disease or also to test drugs. And this is really interesting because there's this new field that is exploding, which is the field of organoid. Because we don't, from stem cell, we just some make neurons or something, but we can build an organ. And people start to build complex things. You can build the brain-like structure, you can build lungs, and you can start connecting them. You can make brain and muscles together in vitro. So you can start, and there's already people thinking, oh, but if we let this brain, they're called organoids, if we let these brain organoids grow, will they start thinking? Will they start feeling pain? There's a lot of discussion about what we can make with stem cell outside of the body. So not only for regenerative to go back, but really to study in the lab, and we can make things that we were not able to make before. And we can make this in the lab, and we can make an organ, and we can see what is wrong with a certain disease. We can test drugs. So this is one big application of stem cell that it's also what I'm working on. And it's also a lot of really exploding risks.
That is super interesting. So it makes a lot of sense that we can then test and figure out like what's the best medicine, so we can both use yeah. That would be much better, because today we are giving the wrong medicine way too often, and also we want to discover better medicine more fast, right? I think I read it was a German insurance company that found out that every half an hour someone dies in Germany because of the wrong medicine. So if we can get closer on that, then of course you could ask, like, when would they have died otherwise? Would they have died 2 or 3 months later, or 2 or 3 days? So there's always, when you hear these crazy statistics, like everything is more complex, right?
Yeah.
But I really super fascinated by what you said. Like, what if you grow and like part of your brain, can that feel and think?
Yeah.
That's a big ethical dilemma.
Yes. So there's some ethical, exactly. There's this really some ethical issue now coming with what we can really build. So like I said, we can, like, we discussed before about maybe making a sperm from a person that in principle wouldn't make a sperm, but you can also build more complex structure like a brain, and then you can start thinking, okay, when do we stop? And do we have to think about it that these sort of clumps of cells will start generating thoughts? I'm not studying on this ethical aspect, but there's people already posing this question because we need guidelines. That's a really important thing about stem cell. Since they have this ability or this hope, they can do so many things. You really need to be careful in how far you can go. So there has to be international guidelines that set the standards. Oh, this you're not allowed to go over a certain number of days. For example, you can make also embryo in a lab, so you're not allowed to let them develop over a certain time. You don't want to make a baby made of your own stem cell that you play around. So there's really limit of some age of days in the lab that you can keep certain. But for the brain organoids, it's still not clear, because, for example, there's still labs that kept them for over years in the lab, so 6 years in the lab, and still they're just a clump of cells. But in principle, they can record, they can have, they look like they were called mini brain in the past. And then they realized that a lot of people had a misconception. And now they are stopped calling it this way because it was really a misunderstanding with the public. They were thinking that they were really a mini brain, and now we're called organoid. But you can connect them with other tissue. You can start, in principle, have this also like in the future, you could build them all together and have like a mini body, maybe, that you connect different tissues, mini lungs and mini brain, and then you can see how they connect, and you can start testing drugs on one case, or also put them into animals. This is also what other people do. They're called chimera. So that means you can make, for example, a brain organo and you put it into a pig. And then what happens? Do the pig become smarter? So the people are trying to do these kind of things that are a bit also, strange, but these are there's something that is possible. So you can, for example, make a liver and then put it in a pig, so that then you can make it grow bigger, and so then you can have better because then you can use this for transplantation, for regenerative medicine. But there are other things that one could do. For example, also going a bit beyond, like I said, this making the animals maybe smarter if we put our cells there. And there are some hints that this could be possible. But but there are also barriers. Yeah.
Of course. It's going to be interesting if we caught up in 20 years' time or 30 years' time, where we are at that point. But it sounds so basically in theory or in principle, as you say, you'd be able with stem cells to create organs. So if I'm missing a new liver, we'll be able to kind of farm it with that. Do you think that's, or is that the same like when we talk about 3D printing organs? Because we already took a heart from a pig, did something, manipulated and implanted it in a human, right? So how is like 3D printing, like doing something with a heart related to stem cells? Is it some of the same or is it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, in principle, yes. In principle, the idea of this printing is that you want to develop in 3D, right? You want to develop a structure. And this is really the difficult thing or the big step, because once we grow things in the lab only in one layer, then you cannot develop anything. So once you start building this organoid, then you can make this 3D printing that you can start. You want the organoid to have a certain shape because that's what makes it an organ. And so this is what the field is working on. And this is really an explosion of things. And of course, there's so many things that you need to in order to make an organ because they're all connected, right? But that's very exciting. And that's also continuously new advances every day, these possibilities of really physically making it more and more similar to the actual organ, just starting from one single cells, for example, from your skin, from one cells of your skin, be able to make a whole organ. So that's what people are working on.
And how much do you need to get started? Is it like a big chunk of skin or is it?
No, very small. You can also do it not only from skin, but you can use it from blood or also from urine. So you can use your urine. So you can pee, and then there's some cells that you can in your urine that are coming from the kidney. And then using this, you can expand them and reprogram them. So in principle, it just with the skin is easier because then there you have more cells. But still, even if for the skin, it's just a small amount. So that's not an issue.
So if we're just talking like crazy thoughts, in the future, you would be able to have a toilet and someone would pick up my urine and they would be able to recreate some of me by having, if in principle, these things continue to develop in the right path, right?
Yes. And the other thing that we haven't touched upon, of course, is all this new explosion about genome editing, right? With CRISPR CAS. Probably also this person that you mentioned about biohacking might have tried CRISPR CAS on himself. So that's the other explosion. On one hand so these are the three pillars, let's say. So one is this rejuvenation, reprogramming. The other one is be able to make organ in 3D. And the third, of course, is be able to modify the genome and then really in a precise manner with CRISPR Cas. And you might have heard a few years ago, this case in China where they were actually scientists really modified the gene of babies that were and then now they are alive, but we don't know about this. I think, don't remember the name, something like Lily or there was, I mean, they're not the real name, but the scientist now is in prison. But after that, there was a big scandal in research saying, okay, we cannot just modify the gene or whatever we want. But in principle, these are really the powerful, the ability to change the fate, so to reprogram, the ability to build things with these organs in 3D, and the ability to modify the genome. So these are really powerful technologies that if we can put them together, one can really be able to do important things for medicine or for, I don't know, aging or healthy aging. But this is, we will see.
How many years I know it's a hard project, but how many years do you think it's going to be before we are like those next stages? So I talked to a few people on longevity and they're kind of projecting like 2029 or 2049. There's Ray Kurzweil that's kind of projected some things. What's your feeling from where you're sitting on the research perspective?
Yeah, I don't know. This is because I mean, I don't work on longevity, so I'm mainly working on this part, like I said, to make the organoids or the cells to test drugs.
And when are we better with that, or are we already where we need to be to test drugs really well?
Yeah, but this were already there. So I think that's where my hope would be, if I could be able, to find some cure for some incurable disease. That would be my hope. Whether we can actually modify the age, limit of the whole human population, that's really beyond. I'm really not, to be honest, I'm really not sure that it's so easy as the people now think, because there's so many things to think about it. Because, like I said before, this stem cell population decrease over time, right? So what if you want to rejuvenate? Yes, but some that are already decreasing, and there's already damage that has been done. So it could be that some people think in order to allow this, increased longevity, you might have to act on the stem cell before birth. So like in, prenatal in your mother uterus, and go there and do something to make the stem cell healthier and so on. So that then when you're born, but I don't know. This is something really like more science fiction that the real science. But of course, there's a lot of money and a lot of interest, like you said, with people with money that they would, hope to live longer. And there are some studies in mice. They're even just by exchanging the blood, or younger animal to an older animal, you can. But I don't know how many years. This is hard to predict. Of course, science is so fast and things develop so fast. So a few years ago, we didn't have this genome editing or this reprogramming. So who knows? I don't want to be negative. I'm also, optimistic, but I just simply cannot give an estimate.
I know it's always hard to get researchers because they feel more accountable. So it's often more conservative when you ask the questions.
Yes, but usually we're so used to be on the optimistic side. We usually say, yes, I can make this project. You write a grant to get money in research, and you usually say in 3 years we can do this and that, but it's always longer than that. So my experience that there's always takes so much time to really make it to happen. So for example, in the field, like we were saying before, in the field that I'm working on these rare diseases that are incurable, and these are pediatric disease, so the children there's nothing to be done. We're good at making the stem cell. We're good at testing the drug, but even if we found now some candidates from there to really being able to go to the patient, so it's so long because you need to make this clinical trial and you need to go to the European. Now we're going to the European Medical Agency. We need to have this and that. So it really takes a long time to go from, let's say, an exciting discovery to a practical application.
Yeah. So now you're in the field, but for someone like me or someone that's not in the field, what would you suggest that we do to kind of, block out the noise? Like, can understand like what is real and what is not real, and when is it actually something that if you're in some kind of situation, you either have the challenges physically or mentally, or you have the money to do something else for you. What would you use as the guiding line to figure out? Because as you said, it takes a long time before things get approved. And if you're really sick or something else, I know it's hard for you to recommend anyone to do something that's not fully approved, but like, how do you figure out whether someone is like a total scam or whether they might just be early days?
Yes, that's a very important question. And so we see also now with this age of misinformation is really, so my I don't know, my idea is always to rely on experts. And I know that sometimes there are also scams among experts. That happens. But in general, if you rely on so if you see a publication out there, it doesn't mean that necessarily it's true just because it's published. Unfortunately, that's the case. So you really need to see who published, in which journal, when, how. And so unfortunately, some of the work is also on the public side, which is a bit really the shame of the scientific field in general, that it's not able to block this noise, like you said. So I would say that you need to do some homework to understand first, and then contact people. And then, like you said, we also have this drug that it's not yet approved, but we're doing some compassionate use in a small number of patients that are contact reading the papers that we publish and so on. So you can do that. If you see a certain scientist working on, you can contact and say, okay, do you have something going on and so on? Because you can be part of the first people trying a certain medicine or procedure. So this is possible, but you really need to target people that are in a boring, respectful institution. And that's unfortunately still the thing that makes it the first step to believe something. If someone is in a strange institute and is claiming a lot, usually it's a red light.
Yeah, makes sense. When we spoke before, you mentioned something about mitochondria and stem cells that is important to understand. And so the way I understand mitochondria is kind of like it's the powerhouses of the cell. Is what I've been told. And basically, for someone that comes with a business background, if mitochondria are doing well, your cells are doing well, you are doing much better. That's kind of the very short explanation I've been told.
Yes, exactly. I may be talking too much about mitochondria so please stop me. But yeah, this is really because it's really my interest. But that's exactly the point. So mitochondria are, giving the energy to the cell. So if they're healthy, your cells is healthy, because they not only give energy, but they do a lot of things. Because that's interesting, because besides our genome, where we have the genes, we have another genome inside the mitochondria. So it's the only additional genomes that we have. So mitochondria, they have their own additional genome that contains genes only to produce energy. So that means this thing in the cell is very important and has to be regulated by an additional gene. So which means that also for stem cell, mitochondria are also important, but stem cell somehow like to keep these mitochondria more immature because they're stem cell, and so that means there are also less mitochondria and they are producing less energy, which could be a bit strange to think about it, but that's because stem cell because mitochondria, they also do something else, which is the downside. While they produce energy, they make these free radicals. You might have heard about free radicals. There are also when you eat something, you can eat something that it's an antioxidant. So there's something against the free radicals. And these are produced by mitochondria while they produce energy. So the more active cells are also they have more active mitochondria. They also produce more free radicals. And this can be harmful, can damage your genome or your proteins and so on. So stem cells like to keep these mitochondria a bit less active to protect against these free radicals. So, and then once they differentiate, they become more active, and then and that's why also the cells that then they're produced, they start having damage over time when they age. So that's why it happens that our cells over time, they have damage because of this activity of the mitochondria. So in principle, there is some possibility of transferring only mitochondria, so without the cells. So there's been some studies that you can transfer mitochondria from stem cell that are immature and put them in other cells, and they don't have damage and they could be better. So there's a lot of new avenues of just using mitochondria as a therapy that you can, for example, they also for heart, because you can inject exogenous mitochondria and they can go there and we don't do that. I'm not doing this, but I've read about this, that there was an operation also in the US recently where they used these pigs mitochondria. I have a lot of them, and then they use that for transplantation. So to provide energy from a source of mitochondria that are healthy.
That's fascinating. But we can also do a lot to improve our mitochondria, which is not that complex. Like exercise, sleep, fasting, photobiomodulation.
Yes, I mean, I think that this is really something that so it's not my field, let's say, of research, but I'm also personally very interested in this. So I also think that it's good to think about what you eat or what you do or what you put in your body, and because really the fuel create the kind of fuel that your cells are exposed to, then they will be different in what they produce. So if you have more sugar or if you have more fat, so this is really important, and this is nutrition, and that's something that a lifestyle can be important in how your mitochondria are healthy. So the whole field of nutrition is very important because it's because, like I said, what you put in your body, it makes the difference in what your cells respond and what they will produce, whether they produce free radicals or not. And I think this is not only for us, let's say, healthy, but also for patient. And so that's also what I'm working on with this patient, with these mitochondrial diseases, where these mitochondria do not work. And so the way also they either exercise or not, or what they eat, this is really important. And so this is becoming also clear that also the early part, like I said, I mentioned before, something even before birth, something happened when our stem cells were more, where our body were generating, in what was even at that time, what we were exposed also makes a difference. So basically the environment and the way we treat ourselves is shaping our body. So I think that the thing you mentioned before about nutrition or about weight or exercising or your lifestyle whether you eat vegetarian or meat, this is also things that are so important, and this is something that such an explosion of field of this, and they also influence the stem cell capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Alessandro, what do you do as a private individual to stay on top of your game apart from doing the research so that we can stay on the top easier?
Yes. So actually, for me, I'm always personally, I'm very grounded by my family. So I have my daughter, my wife. So I'm very, so also during this difficult time, during difficult time of lockdown and so on, for us, we were, very happy because we have a nice family. We live in a bubble. Luckily, none of my relatives were affected. So for me now, the routine of working from home was actually very pleasant. I can do my yoga in the morning. I can do my daily fasting and then I can then start doing my video calls. So
Do
I
you do
think that
intermittent fasting, or do you do 24 hours or like several day fasting, or?
well, I just do something that it's compatible with the normal life, which is basically to at least do 12 hours, very easy, at least 12 hours fasting every day. So at least to avoid stupid thing, let's do a snack in the evening, or these kind of things that don't make any sense. And so I think so I just have a regular boring life. My daughter comes, so I just don't, but I just try within these borders to have some of this structure, have some healthy exercise, not too much, or but this healthy fasting, but not too much. So just something to keep me, let's say, a little bit, but not in a position where I try something extreme. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Time is running really fast. I can see that I could be speaking with you for hours. It's so fascinating and fantastic how we are evolving the research, yet also at some point scary from the ethical perspective, what we can do and what it changes to be human. I think I'll have to make one episode on that at one point, but being an optimist, then I very much look at the bright side of it and believe that we'll do the right things, and I hope that we'll continue. I always ask my guest in the end, what is, if you had to give 3 advice on how to live a happy, healthy, and meaningful life? So it doesn't have to be related to stem cells.
Yeah, sure. So for me, it's also what I was saying at the beginning, right? That I wanted to do something good in my life, but I was not good for myself. So I think it really, if you're lucky or if you're able, you should. I think what makes the whole difference is something that makes you, satisfied. And so if I was, let's say, like I said at the beginning, I wanted to be a doctor, but then I was very stressed and maybe I was making somebody else better, but not myself, and then wouldn't bring any. So I think by working on trying something that it makes you satisfied and happy, then you can give this back. So I think this for me is the first most important thing. But of course, then also being lucky and finding somebody that can be there for you. I think that's the other main part that of course is, both things are hard, but for me this also makes a difference, and also because I like it. Also, the third thing for me is also to do something that maybe are different from what you usually thought. So for me, that was also related to the fact of living abroad, because I'm from Italy, from Milan, and then I was in the US, Germany, and now we live also in the Netherlands. So I just by having a different perspective, and just by thinking I don't have to do what everybody else does, I think this liberates me from all this pressure of being like everybody else. So I think that for me is another thing, that if you can liberate yourself from what you think that is expected from you, then you can start also doing, maybe not that you do anything exceptional, but at least you're free from these expectations. And for me, living abroad makes this trick, but it doesn't have to be. But I think that's something that it really depends how you are. So I would say maybe these 3 things. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Alessandro. Where can people find out more about it, about you, if they're like, I want to learn more about its research and so on?
Yeah. So I mean, we have our lab website. I also have my Twitter account. That's also the thing that changed with the social media, because now it's so nice with, for example, with scientific community, with Twitter, to exchange exchange in real time. You can exchange protocols and details. So I would say these are the 2 major parts on our webpage or on Twitter. So where I'm always active.
Great. I'll put that in the show notes. Alessandro,
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you. That was really nice being here, and I appreciate your time and everything. Thank you.